Hey, what up everybody, this is Stevie Breach coming to you today. I had a lot of fun on my lunch listening to the Stone Cold Steve Austin Unleashed podcast with Paul Heyman. I know that Paul Heyman is a return guest, but Stone Cold Steve Austin, that show went over so well that SummerSlam weekend, Stone Cold Steve Austin went out to where Paul Heyman was staying and recorded a podcast. He didn't like the first one so much, he threw it in the trash can for a later date. He said he would release it once he needed to fill in a date and call it the Lost Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast. And he basically went back out the next day, re-recorded the show, and he said that it was one of the favorite ones that he's ever done. Stone Cold Steve Austin, for the most part, just went over the Paul Heyman documentary. It seemed that he had watched the show recently and wanted to go out and re-interview Paul Heyman and sort of get inside scoops on the stories that popped up along. They talked about his time at Studio 54. Paul Heyman talked about when he was hired. The guy asked him basically if he wanted to get paid cash, if he wanted to get paid under the table, if he wanted to get paid in cocaine. Lots of inside stories that go along with things like that. But I think the one thing that everybody's looking for is the one thing that Paul Heyman brought up at the very end of the episode. As Stone Cold Steve Austin was trying to wrap it up out of the middle of nowhere, Paul Heyman brings up WrestleMania 31 in Santa Clara, California, about a 1 hour, maybe a little bit more, about a 100-mile trip from where Stone Cold Steve Austin lives in Southern California, as well as WrestleMania 32 in Dallas, Texas, the home state of Stone Cold Steve Austin, where he's much known for. He's got the tattoo of Texas down on his leg. He was always billed as being from Victoria, Texas throughout his whole career. Stone Cold Steve Austin is basically, last year around WrestleMania 30, closed the door on returning to the ring. I think he did it on his own podcast, but for some reason I think he might have done it in an interview with Chris Jericho on the Talk Is Jericho show, just basically saying that there was nothing out there for Stone Cold Steve Austin to do in a wrestling ring. The only thing he was to do was tarnish the sort of the legacy that he had built. There was nothing really for him to go out and do that. It was basically the same explanation he did as saying why he didn't wrestle Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 18. He really didn't think that Hulk Hogan could live up to what Stone Cold Steve Austin was putting up at that place, and it didn't really want to stink up the place. I think he might have made one of the biggest mistakes of his career that day, seeing how big the Rock versus Hollywood Hogan match was, but I think that helped out Hulk Hogan as well as the Rock with their careers from there on out, basically giving Hulk Hogan a whole bunch of boosted confidence into what they were doing. Is that basically no matter how hard he tried in WWE, he was not going to be able to be a monster heel, seeing how he had run over the Rock with a semi-truck through an ambulance, and the place still cheered him like crazy as it went down, even though The Rock was one of the biggest baby faces in the wrestling world back then. Stone Cold Steve Austin had already been asked about if he was ever going to wrestle again very recently. I believe it was during SummerSlam weekend, during an interview, and Stone Cold Steve Austin basically was trying to shut that door as politely as possible. He said he wasn't out there politicking for a match just like Hulk Hogan was. If he feels like he wants a match, he feels that, with the legacy that he built up for himself, Vince McMahon would grant him that wish, but he's not out there asking for it, and he's not out there looking for it. But Paul Heyman wasn't going to take no for an answer. Basically, he asked, what's going to go down? And Stone Cold Steve Austin said basically that there wasn't any competition out there for anybody to fight. I think that's 100% wrong. I think that a match against The Undertaker, even though the streak is gone, is a match that could take place at WrestleMania. John Cena is a match that you could easily patch up the best of the 2000s against the best of the 90s. I know that Cena's already done versus the Attitude Era with The Rock, but I know the place would go crazy. Everybody always watches that Tribute to the Troops stunner with Stone Cold Steve Austin dressed up as Santa Claus hitting the big stunner on John Cena. It's just too bad that we never got a follow-up on anything from there. Another match that Paul Heyman was easily booking for was for somebody to take on Brock Lesnar. I know that the easy plans right now are for Roman Reigns to win the Royal Rumble and go on and fight him, but I think there's a lot of people out there doubting Roman Reigns, and the way that they're pushing Brock Lesnar right now is that the fact that nobody in the WWE is going to be able to stop them. Why not bring out somebody from the past and try and take down Brock Lesnar himself? I know that Brock wrestles a very physical style in the Stone Cold Steve Austin's neck. They're very, very going to have to find some way to do a whole lot of smoke and mirrors in order to pull this off. But definitely, if they were able to do this at WrestleMania 31, if they were able to do this at WrestleMania 32, I think that they would make a whole lot of wrestling fans happy, as well as break a whole lot of records. they're going to need something very, very big at WrestleMania 32, a venue where they could top 100,000 fans for the first time in a WrestleMania. I don't care if it's paid, I don't care if it's unpaid. If you get 100,000 people watching wrestling, that's a real big deal, especially for something that a whole bunch of people don't even consider a sport. But you know, Stone Cold Steve Austin for years has said that he wasn't going to come back to wrestling. It was the 3-year gap between WrestleMania 27 and WrestleMania 30. But the one thing we've learned about Stone Cold Steve Austin, as he loves to say no, is that there's a will, there's a way. If it makes sense, he's going to do it. Yeah, getting him out there with The Rock and Hollywood Hogan, 3 of the biggest stars from wrestling past. He was able to go to WrestleMania 30. He also looked at it as a way to go out there and get a whole bunch of sort of recordings for his podcast. You know, he did Paul Heyman that weekend. He did, who the fuck else did he interview that weekend? He got a whole bunch of stuff. Remember when he went to the Staples Center for the Monday Night Raw in Los Angeles? He was able to interview Big Show, Zeb. He did some other interviews there as well. I know he's been trying to get that Triple H interview for a long time. But I think that it definitely, bringing Stone Cold Steve Austin into the WrestleMania festivities is going to make it a whole lot bigger. We saw how big his show was at SummerSlam with his confidential panel, you know, where you got to do sort of like an access for the first time, you know, signing autographs and taking pictures with the fans. But wrestling with Stone Cold Steve Austin will always be better. A match against Brock Lesnar will be huge and do probably the biggest numbers that Brock Lesnar will be able to do in WWE. You can only do Brock Lesnar versus John Cena so many times, and we don't even know if the Brock Lesnar versus Rock match is going to happen. So this is, to me, Stone Cold Steve Austin. If you ever come across this video, please, I'd love to see you one more time. I understand, and I give you all the respect in the world for the legacy that you built from WWE and everywhere else that you wrestled, but you know, if there's a will, there's a way, and I believe that I want to see it. I don't want to see you get injured. I don't want to see you get killed. But a whole lot of wrestling fans out there are just like me, wanting to see one more match from Stone Cold Steve Austin. I know that WrestleMania 19 almost killed you from watching the Mania documentary on the WrestleMania 20 DVD. But you know, you lay off the Red Bulls, you get some more sleep. Hopefully, you don't have any more stress in your life, and you won't have that. Oh, I guess you almost had a stroke or something like that. You look pretty fucked up. But make sure you check out Mania of Mania, the documentary on WrestleMania 19 on the WrestleMania 20 DVD if you've never seen it. Peace out, everybody.